Hey everyone, welcome to this deep dive, into the world of Cleopatra's the seventh Philopator, the last active pharaoh of ancient Egypt. And we're going to be using the Wikipedia article on Cleopatra as our guide for this one. So get ready for some surprising twists and turns, because her life was anything but ordinary.
It certainly was, full of intrigue, power struggles, and these larger-than-life personalities. And it's so fascinating to see how her life just intersected with those major events in Roman history, especially during that decline of the Republic.
Okay, so let's start with something that I think really sets Cleopatra apart from like all those predecessors, her multilingualism. We know that most of the Ptolemaic rulers primarily spoke Greek, but Cleopatra was fluent in Egyptian, which was pretty rare for the Ptolemies. What do you make of that?
It's such a significant detail. It really hints at that deeper connection with like Egyptian culture and, her subjects. I mean, imagine her being able to address the people in their own language. It would have been like this powerful symbol of unity and a strategic advantage for someone seeking to consolidate power.
Yeah, it makes me think about how much communication shapes like perceptions and relationships even today. Now, Plutarch even claims she spoke like a bunch of other languages too. Ethiopian, Hebrew, Arabic, Syrian Median, Parthian, and maybe even Latin. Talk about a linguistic powerhouse.
Yeah, that's quite a list. If it's true, it really speaks volumes about her ambition and her understanding of the importance of communication, especially on like a global scale. I mean, such a diverse linguistic palette would have been invaluable for diplomacy, negotiation, forging alliances, you know, especially in a region as complex as like the Eastern Mediterranean.
For sure. So speaking of complexity, let's zoom out a bit and talk about the Ptolemaic dynasty itself. Can you give us a quick recap of who they were and how they came to rule Egypt?
Yeah, definitely. So the Ptolemies were a dynasty of Macedonian Greek rulers. They took over Egypt after the death of Alexander the Great, and they ruled for nearly 300 years, essentially a Greek elite governing a predominantly Egyptian population.
I imagine that created some interesting cultural dynamics. It's a situation ripe for conflict and tension.
Well, absolutely. And to add another layer of complexity, during Cleopatra's time, the Roman Republic was becoming increasingly involved in Egyptian affairs. There were Roman senators who saw Egypt as ripe for like annexation. And Cleopatra's own father, Ptolemy XII, relied heavily on Roman support to maintain his throne.
So Cleopatra walks into this scene already facing a lot of internal and external pressure. Can you paint a picture of the challenges that she encountered early on?
Oh, absolutely. So imagine inheriting a kingdom struggling with famine, economic instability, and like a mountain of debt to Rome. Not to mention she was also thrust into a power struggle with her younger brother, Ptolemy III, with whom she was supposed to rule jointly. It was a recipe for chaos.
Wow, she must have felt the weight of the world on her shoulders.
Oh, for sure. Her early reign was just marked by this series of crises and power plays. To navigate these turbulent waters, she made strategic alliances, even siding with prominent Roman figures, like Pompey during his conflict with Julius Caesar.
Now, that's a high-stakes gamble. Siding with a Roman general embroiled in a Roman civil war must have been incredibly risky.
It was a calculated risk. That ultimately backfired. When Pompey was defeated and assassinated, Cleopatra found herself on the losing side. She was forced to flee Alexandria, regroup, and fight for her right to rule.
So it sounds like she was constantly reacting to events and trying to just stay one step ahead of her rivals.
That's a good assessment. And this is where the story takes a dramatic turn with the arrival of Julius Caesar in Egypt.
Ah, yes. The infamous Julius Caesar. Here's where the romantic entanglement with Cleopatra begins, right? But I have a feeling there was more to it than just a love story.
You're absolutely right. While the romantic aspect of their relationship is often emphasized, it's crucial to understand the political motivations behind their alliance.
So last time we kind of left off with Cleopatra's strategic alliance with Julius Caesar. It was a relationship born out of necessity, but it had a profound impact on both of their lives and the course of history.
It really did. I mean, their partnership had some pretty significant consequences for both Egypt and Rome. It's like a prime example of how personal relationships can intertwine with, political power and ambition.
Let's delve deeper into that. I mean, Caesar was already a prominent figure in Rome, and their affair produced a son, Caesarion. That must have added fuel to the fire in terms of Roman politics.
Oh, it certainly did. While Caesar never publicly acknowledged Caesarion as like his legitimate heir, Cleopatra made sure everyone knew who his father was. It was a bold move that demonstrated her ambition and her determination to secure like a future for her son.
Yeah, it must have been a balancing act for her navigating the treacherous waters of Roman politics, while also trying to protect her own interests and those of her son.
Right, she was playing a high-stakes game. And it's fascinating to see how she used her intelligence and charm to kind of advance her position. After Caesar's assassination, she even remained in Rome for a time, hoping to secure recognition for Caesarion as Caesar's heir.
But that didn't quite go according to plan, did it?
Unfortunately not. Caesar's will named his grandnephew Octavian as his primary heir, and this set the stage for a power struggle. That would eventually lead to the downfall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire.
So with Octavian emerging as a major player in Rome, Cleopatra returns to Egypt facing this new set of challenges. And then, of course, there's Mark Antony. I mean, their story is one of the most famous love affairs in history.
It certainly was a passionate and dramatic one, but again, it was also deeply entwined with political strategy and the pursuit of power. I mean, their meeting in Tarsus, with Cleopatra arriving on her lavish barge, is legendary. It's a scene that captures her theatrical flair and her understanding of the power of imagery.
Right, it's like something out of a Hollywood movie. She knew how to make an entrance and command attention, but let's not forget that she also had these clear political objectives.
Oh, absolutely. She needed to secure Antony's support to strengthen her position in Egypt and counter the growing influence of Octavian. Their alliance led to the regaining of former Ptolemaic territories,
Mm.
including Cyprus and parts of the Levant, expanding her kingdom and influence.
So it seems like a win-win situation for both of them. But if I recall correctly, Antony already had a wife back in Rome. That must have complicated things.
It did. Antony's Roman wife Fulvia was a formidable figure in her own right. She even launched a war against Octavian, aiming to secure power for her husband. It was a testament to her ambition and political acumen.
Wow, so Cleopatra had to contend with a rival in Rome as well. Talk about a high-pressure situation.
It was a complex web of relationships and rivalries. And just as the situation with Fulvia reached a boiling point, she suddenly died, leaving Antony free to reconcile with Octavian.
That's quite a twist. But their reconciliation came with a catch, right? Wasn't Antony pressured to marry Octavian's sister Octavia?
That's right. The marriage was a strategic move to solidify the peace between Antony and Octavian. It was a political alliance masquerading as a family union.
Poor Cleopatra. I can't imagine she was thrilled about this new development.
Right. We can only speculate about her feelings, but it's likely she saw the marriage as a political necessity for Antony, and perhaps an obstacle to be overcome. Interestingly, despite this new marriage, Antony and Cleopatra's relationship continued. She even gave birth to twins fathered by Antony, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene.
Wow, their children's names, the sun and the moon. Those are pretty symbolic. It's almost as if they were setting the stage for a new dynasty.
The symbolism is certainly striking. It suggests grand ambitions and this desire to create a powerful legacy. Cleopatra was a master of using imagery and symbolism to bolster her authority and legitimize her reign.
So for a while, it seems like things were going relatively well for them. They had a passionate relationship, children, and they were consolidating their power. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, as we know from history, maintaining such a delicate balance of power is rarely easy, especially in the world of ancient politics. Antony, needing to secure his eastern territories, embarked on a military campaign against the Parthians.
Ah, the Parthians, formidable enemies of the Romans. I'm guessing this is where things start to unravel for Antony and Cleopatra.
We're on the right track. Antony's decision to rely on Cleopatra for military and financial aid during his Parthian campaign raised eyebrows in Rome.
I can only imagine Octavian's reaction. He must have seen this alliance as a direct threat to his own power.
Octavian was a shrewd political operator, and he wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away. He used Antony's reliance on Cleopatra as ammunition in his propaganda war, portraying her as this manipulative seductress who was leading Antony astray.
The age-old tactic of demonizing a powerful woman, it's a recurring theme throughout history. But did Antony believe this propaganda?
That's a complex question. He was clearly torn between his loyalty to Rome and his passionate love for Cleopatra. His decision to return to Alexandria with her in triumph after the Parthian campaign suggests that their bond was strong. However, the seeds of discord had been sown.
So what happens next? Do they try to mend fences with Octavian, or do they double down on their alliance in defiance of Rome? Last time we were talking about Antony's Parthian campaign and, his growing reliance on Cleopatra. Much to Octavian's dismay, it really seemed like a power struggle was brewing, a clash between these two powerful Roman figures.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. What makes this period so fascinating is that the personal and the political are just completely intertwined. You can't really separate Antony's love for Cleopatra from his political ambitions, or Octavian's personal animosity towards her from his desire to consolidate power in Rome.
It's like a Shakespearean drama playing out on this grand scale. So how did this tension finally erupt? Did Antony try to smooth things over with Octavian, or did he choose a different path?
Well, instead of like mending fences, Antony and Cleopatra made a move that would ultimately seal their fate. Remember those donations of Alexandria where they declared their children rulers of like various territories? That was a direct challenge to Octavian's authority. It was almost like saying, we're not playing by your rules.
Right, it was a bold move, but maybe a miscalculation. Did they underestimate Octavian's ruthlessness and his ability to manipulate Roman public opinion?
It's possible. I mean, he was a master of propaganda, and he used it to great effect against Antony and Cleopatra by portraying Cleopatra as this foreign seductress and Antony as like her puppet. He was able to turn the Roman Senate and the people against them.
So the stage was set for this final confrontation. How did this war between Rome and Egypt, between Octavian and Antony and Cleopatra, actually play out?
Well, the decisive battle took place at Actium in 31 BC. It was this massive naval engagement off the coast of Greece. Hundreds of warships clashing, the sea churning with the force of the conflict, the air thick with smoke from like the burning ships and the cries of battle. It was this spectacle of both grandeur and horror.
It sounds like a scene straight out of a historical epic. So what was the outcome of this clash of titans? Did Antony and Cleopatra's forces prevail, or did Octavian's legions prove too strong?
Well, the battle turned into a disaster for Antony and Cleopatra, although Cleopatra is said to have advocated for a naval strategy, believing it was the best way to protect Egypt. Things did not go according to plan. During the battle, Cleopatra's fleet broke through the Roman lines and retreated. Antony, seeing his lover fleeing the battle, followed her with his own flagship.
So she abandoned the fight. Some might call that a cowardly act, a betrayal of their alliance.
Yeah, it's a moment that has been interpreted in various ways throughout history. Some historians believe she panicked. Others suggest it was a calculated move to preserve her remaining forces. Regardless of her motivations, the impact was significant. Antony's fleet, demoralized by their leader's retreat, was ultimately defeated.
What a dramatic turn of events. This sounds like the beginning of the end for Antony and Cleopatra's grand ambitions.
It was. It was a turning point that sealed their fate. They returned to Egypt, but the tide had turned against them. Octavian, emboldened by his victory, pursued them relentlessly, determined to crush his rivals and claim control of Egypt for Rome.
So what happened in those final days? Did they make a last stand, or did they accept their defeat gracefully?
Antony, facing overwhelming odds and believing all was lost, took his own life. Cleopatra, now truly alone, barricaded herself in her mausoleum.
The image of Cleopatra, isolated and facing her own mortality, it's pretty haunting. What happened to her in those final moments? Did she surrender to Octavian, or did she choose a different fate?
Well, there are various accounts of her death, each adding to the mystery surrounding this iconic figure. The most enduring image is that of Cleopatra refusing to become a captive in Octavian's triumph, choosing to end her own life rather than be subjected to humiliation and imprisonment.
Yeah, the asp, the poison. It's a story that has captured the imagination for centuries. Was it an act of defiance, a final assertion of her own agency in the face of this overwhelming defeat?
It's certainly a powerful image, and one that has contributed to her enduring legacy. With Cleopatra's death, the Ptolemaic dynasty came to an end, and Egypt, once a proud and independent kingdom, fell under Roman rule.
So what's the takeaway from all of this? What can we learn from Cleopatra's story, beyond the romance and the tragedy?
I think her story serves as a reminder that history is rarely simple or straightforward. It's this complex tapestry woven from ambition, love, political maneuvering, and the relentless pursuit of power. Cleopatra was a woman of exceptional intelligence, linguistic talent, and political savvy. She navigated a world dominated by powerful men and left an undeniable mark on history.
Yeah, her story also reminds us that even the most brilliant and ambitious individuals can be overtaken by events, and that sometimes a single decision, a single battle, can change the course of history.
Absolutely. And perhaps that's the most thought-provoking aspect of Cleopatra's story. What if she hadn't fled the Battle of Actium? What if Antony had chosen a different path? It's impossible to know. But it's fascinating to consider those what-ifs and how those choices shape the world we live in today.
It's a reminder that even in the face of seemingly inevitable outcomes, individual choices and actions matter. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the life and legacy of Cleopatra the Seventh. I hope you enjoyed exploring her world with us. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the stories that shape our understanding of the past and the present.
Tell us what you think about this episode. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.